In terms of adaptation, of course, we already have an adaptation fund, but the adaptation fund hardly has any money in it. There are also a number of adaptation technologies which are required by particularly vulnerable countries. I mention this because sometimes an impression is wrongly sought to be created that the bigger developing countries like India and China, or South Africa and Brazil, are somehow or the other ignoring the special vulnerabilities of the least developed countries and the small island developing states. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we say is all developing countries deserve support, but in particular, least developed countries, small island developing states need more support, need priority. If there are a number of climate-friendly technologies which are already available, which are already feasible, should we not create a global mechanism through which these technologies can be diffused as rapidly as possible and as widely as possible? You must also have a global mechanism for capacity building amongst developing countries so that they are enabled to absorb these technologies. Now, as soon as we say this kind of diffusion is necessary, you have to deal with the IPR issue. And the IPR issue can be addressed in various ways. Do you relax the IPR? Does the global mechanism buy the IPR and then diffuse it as public good? Does it lease these technologies at a price and then makes it available to developing countries free of charge? There are various ways you can handle it. It's not such an insuperable problem. Then we come to finance. We say that if you have to make a transition amongst developing countries from a strategy of growth which is essentially based on carbon fuels to one which is essentially based on renewable sources of energy or clean sources of energy, but the transition involved is costly. If you have to accelerate that transition, therefore, you will need more money. You will need more technology. Reasonably ambitious goal that will require, in our calculation, at least 0.5% of the GDP of developed countries. If you want really an extraordinary response, a very ambitious response, then we say you should have at least 1% of the GDP of developed countries. And this should not be taken away from the commitments which have already been made by the developed countries for ODA, which is 0.7% of their GDP. But at the same time, these resources need to be predictable, need to be stable. Otherwise, how do I make long-term plans? If this keeps, there is a certain volatility in this finance, how can I plan ahead? So how do I bring about predictability? How do I bring about stability in addition to sufficiency in financial resources? For that, we say the best way to do it is to have some kind of an assessed contribution system whereby developed countries contribute to this fund under the UNFCCC in accordance with some well laid down criteria. We feel that these criteria should be: what is your contribution to historical emissions? What is your current level of emissions? What is your per capita emissions? What is your total GDP? What is your per capita income? On the basis of that, you can determine an assessed contribution schedule according to which money should go into this fund. And how should this fund be governed? It should not be donor driven. It should be in accordance with our own priorities. Therefore, we say that the governing structure for this fund should be balanced representation of both developed as well as developing countries. So this is how we see what the financing mechanism should be.